Hello, I'm Derek, and in this series of videos I'm going to show you how to write PHP extensions. In this first video we're going to look at how to create the skeleton. Let's dive straight in. Right, we're going to have to start by creating a skeleton. PHP already has a script for this to help us get started. It is distributed in the PHP source distribution. Let me run its help function. In the options you see a bunch of flags that we'll have to use. The X flag defines the name of our extension. We're going to create an extension that does some geospatial algorithms. Hence we'll call our extension geospatial. Secondly, I define the author. In this case I'll use my name. We want to create a skeleton in our current directory, for which we can then use --dir. We're also only going to care about Unix or Linux, so we'll use the only Unix flag as well. This has created a bunch of files. Let's see what's in here. So these are the files that have been created. And I'll go over each of them to show what's in there. As we look into them, I will also remove all the stuff that we don't need that the skeleton generation created for us. Let's start with credits. This is simply a file with the name of our extension and the name of the author or authors that you specified in the skeleton script. This is actually not used anywhere else. The second file to open is config.m4. The config.m4 file contains instructions on which things to test for when compiling extensions. I'll open it up. The skeleton creates a lot of comments in here. I will first go over all of them that are not necessary, while explaining what they're actually for. There are two ways of enabling extensions. This isn't actually really important if you have an extension that you load as a shared object, like we're going to do, but in case the extension is going to be part of PHP, at some point it is going to be important which of the flags to use. So you can either use the with geospatial flag or the enable geospatial flag. The first one, with, it tends to be used if the extension also needs to make use of an external library, whereas enable tends to be used for extensions that only wrap algorithms. As it is the latter that we're going to do, we can remove the first bit where it says arg with. Now the language in here is a language called M4, and M4 is pretty outdated and it does things in a very complicated ways. In this first series, we're not going to do anything else with complicated extra libraries that we need to link against or anything like that, so I'll simply ignore this for now. Of course, when you're doing this yourself, feel free to have a read through it. It is fairly reasonably documented. We have no dependencies whatsoever, so we can just leave in have geospatial to say have geospatial support. Not even having this flag enabled geospatial is actually important because this is going to be the default for compiling this shared extension anyway. Let me now save this file that we have updated. Now we can have a look at the geospatial.stop.php file. In this file, in PHP code, you can define which functions and classes are going to be part of your extension. The skeleton already has created the test1 and test2 functions, but of course that is not what our function names are going to be. So I will remove those for now. I will also remove the add undocumentable tag because honestly I don't know what it does. Of course, now I've removed all the functions from the stub file, the extension is going to be empty, but that's okay for now. So the stub file is actually used by the PHP build system to create the arg info file. I will open that up as well, but we're not going to change it because it will be done automatically. Basically it says it is a generated file and you need to edit the stub file instead. This hash is used to make sure that this work is only done if the original stub file changed. As I said, we're not having to change that because this is a generated file. Now there are two more files here that we need to have a look at, which is php_geospatial.h and geospatial.c. Let me open the php_ one first. This file basically defines a few headers, the copyright header as well in a comment, which is not very important, but it defines the basic structures that the PHP build system needs to be able to load your shared extension. So it defines this extern for the model entry, which is going to be part of the C file. It sets a define, it sets the version number, and it does some things to make sure that the extension can get loaded correctly. And then lastly, we have geospatial.c. The .c file is a file where you implement all the functions that are part of this extension. It has added some of the boilerplate code, such as having the if-def-have config.h. This config.h file is created by the build system to define all the things that PHP standard build system already has found to speed things up. It also includes a few headers. PHP-H imports all the functions and features and macros that PHP itself defines. Xstandard info.h is there so that we can create output in PHP info. We include our header file, php_geospatial.h, as well as our generated arg info. The rest of the file then has the two defined functions that we saw originally in our stub file, so we can remove those. Then there's a bunch of other functions that are basically there in every extension. There's rinit, and rinit is a function that is called for each request that a PHP process runs. Most of the things that we're going to do in this series are on command line, so rinit will be called once for every request. There's also an equivalent rshutdown. This combination of rinit and rshutdown allows you to create some resources that are used only within the single run of a single request. The minfo function is there to create our PHP info output. In this case, we're not going to do much with that, but it is also something where you could put your version in. So let me go at that actually. If you remember from my H file, we actually defined a constant for that. This one here, PHP geospatial version. Then below here we have the module entry. The module entry basically links all the different parts of this extension together. It has the extension name, the X functions pointer that points to all the functions that the extension is going to have. There's minit and mshutdown. These are used just like rinit and rshutdown for allocating resources that are going to be used for the whole run of the PHP process and not just for a single request. These are currently defined to null, but we might use of those later. We have our link to rinit. We have no rshutdown. We have our minfo function that we have defined, and then our geospatial version as well, which is the same constant as we put out here. And then we have something called standard model properties that just have to be there regardless of what we're doing. And then lastly, we have some magical macros that PHP uses to be able to load this extension. With this, we should now have all our files to run our first compile. But before I do that, I will initiate a Git repository so that we can keep track of our changes. And then we can add the files that are currently in here. One directory I haven't actually looked at is into the test directory, so let me just quickly do that too. It has a bunch of files in here. Let me open them quickly, but I'll get back to how to write tests later. Basically, this first one is to make sure that the extension is loaded, which is kind of interesting. The next test actually checks for the function that we have removed, so we probably should remove this test file as well. And this last test does the other test function that we also have removed, so I'll remove that as well. The first test doesn't actually do anything useful, but it's good to have at least a test file in place that we can refer to later, so I will keep that and add it to our Git repository as well. And I will now commit this. Now, if I haven't made any typos, I can now run PHP's build system. In order to create actually the configure script that is used by the build system to check what we have available in the system, we first need to run php-ice. This imports PHP's build system into the current directory so that we then can run it. The numbers that you see here are part of PHP's build system, and they differ for each PHP version. The PHP's loader also makes sure that these numbers match for the binaries that you have created, so that you don't get weird crashes. Now I've run php-ice and can now run configure. This checks whether certain things are available in the system and a bunch of other things that now the build system needs. Running configure creates a makefile that you then can use to compile the extension finally. So far no errors, that is good. If we want to run our test file, we can also do that by running make test. If we run make, we get an error here, because we have no functions declared. This is actually normal because we removed all of them from the stub file. That's okay, we'll just move on and create our first function in a moment. If I run a diff, you can actually see that the stub to arcinfo process changed the latter file. And it basically removed everything including X functions, which is necessary for the extension to compile. So maybe it was not so wise to remove all of these functions. I will commit this change as well. As I mentioned in the introduction, in this extension we are going to implement geospatial algorithms. The first one that we'll have a look at is called RDP, an algorithm for simplifying lines and polygons. I have created a separate video to explain how this algorithm works, to which a link will pop up on your screen right now. In the next video, we're going to continue with the extension and make our first ways into wrapping this algorithm. If you have questions or comments, feel free to leave them under this video. Feel also free to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.